Smooth 981, that's the channel. Or just search for Smooth FM and you can find us on there. Don't forget, you can also tweet at Smooth 981. The hashtag is Freshly Pressed 981. We've got the analyst in. It's Mr. C and AB Bozimo this morning. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Zibby. Good morning, Omats. And good morning, Mr. C. Good morning, Lagos and the world around us.
Morning, Zibby. Good morning, Omas. Good morning, AB. Good morning, Lagos.
All right, let's start off with the first story. And this one is coming from Premium Times. How 137 Kaduna school students were rescued, and this is from the Defense Headquarters.
Okay, so on the 7th of March, some students were taken or abducted from a school in Kuriga, Kaduna State. Now, as at the time of the abduction, it was widely reported that 287 students were taken, and a teacher was also taken. So over the weekend, we received news that troops of the Nigerian Army, in conjunction with local vigilante and the police, were able to rescue 137 of the students who were abducted on the 7th of March. And we're glad that they have been reunited with their loved ones. However, we still have about 147 students who are still in captivity. Now, this is a real mystery because the Kaduna state government says every child that was abducted has been released, has been rescued. Now, it's all up in the air, but kudos to the Nigerian army for rescuing 137 students. And we do not know whether ransoms were paid or whether these were negotiations, but the truth of the matter is they were rescued. In addition, students who were kidnapped from Sokoto State have also been returned to the Sokoto State government. So it's been a weekend of positive news for the security agencies in trying to rescue, bring back into, bring back from forced captivity people who were taken into forced captivity. However, we need to clear up this conundrum. In one breath, the Kaduna state government says all the kidnapped pupils have been rescued. In another breath, we find that hard to reconcile given the earlier number stated. So, what is the true position? And it would be nice if the Kaduna state government and the security agencies can provide some clarity in the days going forward. Now, now that this has been done, this is without prejudice. There are also other Nigerians who have been kidnapped for periods of time, including the corpers who were on their way to national service. They're still not out of forced captivity. And this is a clarion call. Yes, the military has tried, it's done its best, but they should also try because truly speaking, no Nigerian deserves to be in forced captivity. And this is a clarion call that they should continue to work hand in hand with the vigilantes, with the local communities, with the police in the various states to ensure that every single Nigerian that is in forced captivity is reunited with loved ones sooner or later.
All right, let's drift away to the Punch newspaper where the headline here states Lagos State government, Lagos State. Okay, Abby, you're just going to chime in.
Very briefly, the only way that the discrepancy between the alleged 287 kidnapped and the 137 released could exist is if there were maybe 107 teachers to 100 and the balance of students, which would be a very admirable teacher-student ratio. So unless it's just a simple case of mathematics gone wrong, then there is a hole in the story. But kudos to the security services, kudos to the children and their families. The relief, I can't even imagine what it's like to have your child away from you from the 7th to the 24th. That is, I mean, there are celebrations all around.
Now to the Punch newspaper where Lagos State ready for state police. That's according to the Attorney General. That's what he's saying.
He's made that assertion and said, look, he and the governor of Lagos State and 15 other governors have all, put together their preparations and announced them maybe to the central government that, look, they're ready for state police. I find it interesting that nobody seems to ever want to mention what states these are. I'll be curious to know what states say that they are ready and which ones maybe are not so ready. State police could only come if and when the Nigerian constitution is adjusted or modified. There have been attempts in the past. There have been reasons why people say Nigeria and Nigerians are not ready for it. But I will never forget back in the day living on Fola Agoro in Shomolu there, where we had this policeman who was always available in our locality. And we got to know the man. And I bet the man got to know all the young men there. In fact, when he's passing by, we'd make sure we'd give him cold water to drink and all that. There was this sense of connection and conviviality between us and the police via that person. There is merit to the idea of localizing the police service rather than just deploying somebody from wherever to wherever and expecting them to get embedded into the system. And before you know it, they can be deployed elsewhere. That, of course, it doesn't remove that risk that has been raised of people turning state police into a menacing force. But if there's a proper framework, proper potential consequences for misconduct, I think state police, as well as adjustments in revenue allocation, because state police cost money. Right now, governors support the federal police in their various states, but have no real authority. In other countries that we claim to be copying, they even have campus police. There could be Unilag police. There could be Shomolo police. There could be all sorts of police, because policing is seen as what it is, an attempt to enhance security. Simply define jurisdictional areas and jurisdictional superiority, and in certain cases you can take over investigations in certain locations. So I don't know why any part of the country is still, quote unquote, afraid of it with the proper things in place. Even with the current state of affairs, we are not doing all we can do. I believe it could add veritable layers of security to the country. I'm happy to hear Lagos State, as always in many areas, being ahead of the curve. And I would hope that we would know what the other states are that are staying ahead of the curve. Then we'd like to know which states are remaining behind the curve. Then we can investigate why and hopefully overcome their limitations and step forward into that new world.
And because this story has a sort of a strong link to the first story, where now 137 students have been reunited, at least for now, with the state government, and they will be reunited with their families by today, hopefully. Now, the strong connection between that state police feeling this void of security and knowing that how soon again do we not have this recurrent slap across the face of the hawk coming from the sky to just come pick up the chicks from mother hen, and then the chicken only has curses to say and then pray probably for the hawk to release the children once again.
I mean, right here in this story, they're talking about how the Lagos State has a neighborhood safety corps already in place, fully kitted, even to the extent of having body cams, which I believe can certainly help enhance the integrity of the personnel involved. So seriously, I don't know. You heard about how over in some of these areas where these children have been unfortunately taken by terrorists, you have the local vigilantes and local hunters and so on who are able to help the security officials trace and track them down. That is, let's say, some shade of the localization of security operations. And so I believe on balance, there will be more advantages than disadvantages, albeit being conscious of potential disadvantages, and with a proper framework put in place consequences, you can enhance overall security. Surely that is our greatest desire.
All right, thank you for that, AB. Let's go on to the messages. Don't forget, you can send them through via WhatsApp 0809 981. This comes from Abilade Amble from Badagry, and AB says, "We are happy our children are back, and it is pointless asking the military to tell us how the children were rescued. But what should we do to end abductions in Nigeria? If the process of rescuing the Kiriga children did not involve ransom payments, then the actions of the military in the rescue should serve as a deterrent to the kidnappers. We're moving on to premium times. Death toll rises in Niger attack. Residents say 66 people buried.
So over the weekend, there was a deadly attack in Niger State, and the community was attacked by armed assailants, presumably non-state actors, and 66 people are reported to have been buried. Now, the discovery of corpses is still ongoing, and it is very, very shocking news because once again, we do not know what has triggered this, and we understand that as part of this attack, certain individuals were also abducted, and their loved ones or their families can expect to receive ransom demands any moment from now. Now, this is not to indict the recognized state actors like the Nigerian Police Force or the Nigerian Army, because the truth of the matter is they're doing their very best given the circumstances they find themselves in, and they cannot prevent every single attack. And as we've seen from the earlier story, they do have the ability and willingness to rescue people from forced captivity as the occasion demands for it. So our thoughts go out to the families of the people who lost their lives in this attack. And this is a call to the Niger State government, just like your counterpart in Kaduna State and I guess even in Sokoto State. It's time to further increase your contacts, your liaisons with the vigilantes, with the local communities, with the local police, because they know the layout of the land, and even create some sort of security synergy even with the military so that these sort of attacks are prevented from happening again. And for those who've been abducted, use these means to derive intelligence, go after the abductors, and then return the people to their loved ones. But again, the security agency should also want to start considering, rather than being always reactive, sometimes be proactive. Try to identify some of these camps or prevent them from being formed, or even track the movement of non-state actors in our forests and our not so clear areas so that we can prevent attacks from this going forward.
You're still listening to Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1. You can let us know your thoughts. AB, okay, go ahead, AB.
I mean, unfortunately, in this story, there was a pattern. State security officials swung into action and actually detained some of those who allegedly rustled the cattle. Based on Nigeria's decades-long history of patterns, there could have been a suspicion that something of a reprisal may come. I feel the security forces could have set up some kinds of surveillance or perimeter to prevent it, because just 2 days later, it is stated in the story that heavily armed terrorists, I despise the word bandits, came and engaged in this orgy of slaughter and violence. By now, don't we know how this, while they did the right thing, first of all, to detain the alleged castle rustlers, they should have been more proactive and prevented terrorists from coming allegedly heavily armed. I make this statement sometimes on a lighter note. If I take my laptop that I've had for over 3, 4, 5 years, merely to cross from one point to another, the likelihood that I'll be queried about its source and origin, and especially receipt, is high. How do people move around in this country heavily armed to the extent that they can converge on locales and slaughter, murder, pillage, destroy, cause arson, and seemingly melt away into nothingness? It doesn't stand to reason.
All right, thank you for that, AB. You can keep the messages coming, 0809 444 0981. Do stay with us. The conversation continues on the other side.
We're smooth. 98.1 FM is still freshly pressed, and we've got our analyst still here, AB Bozimo and Mr. C. As we return to the papers, AB, the Punch newspaper, well, these guys, they're back out of the trenches as we speak. The Senior Staff Association of Nigerian Universities and the Non-Academic Staff Union, NASU, they're set to resume today after the warning strike. So has the message been drummed home already after the strikes right now, or they would head for a longer one?
The question that comes to mind is, if a tree falls in a forest and nobody is there, does it make a sound? They had a strike for what I feel they put forward as a very legitimate thing. 2 tiers of consideration. After a certain other set of people engaged in a strike, they were allegedly paid from the former administration, and they said that they engaged in strike and they have not yet been paid. So they went on this strike, of course, in the middle of very major national events like the loss of our soldiers and the kidnapping and all that. Perhaps their strike went underneath the radar. I'm not saying it didn't affect the various institutions where they are. Definitely, when strikes used to happen, it used to shut down a lot of amenities available to students then in school. So definitely their strike had an impact on their targets people. But did they get a response? Have they, according to them, they have not yet even got any response from the government. And that tells me, from an administrative perspective, the government is not taking their matter seriously enough yet. A government must be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. The soldiers who gallantly went and secured the release of our terrorized children were not the ones I expect to meet with NASU, SANU, and NAAT. Therefore, and there are enough highly paid bureaucrats in office, in authority, to have met with them. So for them to go on the strike after 7 and 3 days and seemingly get not a single response, there seems a bit of negligence and just, ignoring of their plight. I think one standard should fit all. I don't know what the details of the competing strikes were. I don't know why the government would choose not to address them, but I think the strike should call attention of the authorities to their plight, and they should be addressed. Let's not have a situation where they feel down the line they have to go on another strike. It helps no one. It really helps no one.
And because digging deep a bit here, where it talks about, well, what your part of the protest is, well, it's a work, no pay, and so if you didn't work, so why should you be paid? And so why are they going on a protest if there's a policy they know in this regard?
They allege that other unions, specifically ASU, were paid or are in the process of being paid. And so that's why I say one standard should fit all, because ASU doesn't operate independently of SANU, NASU, and all. The entire system needs all the parts to operate effectively. We're not saying that teachers need NASU to do their research and teaching, but surely the classrooms have to be kept secure, clean, the facilities available, and so on. So let no part of a university system be deemed as less important than the other, despite the fact that we know you earn your degrees through diligent, receiving of the teaching by the lecturers, but the teachers need the support, like we all do. In every organization, you need synergy between all levels. So they're saying, if instead of us, other people in our system are being paid, our payments too should be considered.
All right, thank you, AB. For message coming through, this is Ajayi. Ajayi says, kudos to Lagos State government for stating its readiness to establish state police. Besides, it's constitutionally imperative that each state in the federation must have the police to enforce its laws. It will bring police into the grassroots where these crimes are committed on a daily basis. Other states must not hesitate to key in. Dami says checks and balances must be put in place to prevent abuse of state police. But let's face the facts. The benefits far outweigh the fears. The current police system is already abusive against the citizens, but ineffective against crime. So what more do we fear? Doing nothing is not an option. Deji says there are current issues with the army and the Nigerian police in terms of jurisdiction. Has it been resolved? The army seems to be doing a better job with the kidnappings and rescues. How come? Second, he says, what will happen to the Nigerian police force when the state police starts operation? Who will have jurisdiction? In America, there's the state police and then the FBI, the CIA, the National Guard, among other law enforcement. Even there are still issues with jurisdiction. You can keep the messages coming, 0809 4440981. And the next headline comes from Daily Trust. Tinubu bans birthday advertorials, opts for quiet celebration.
Thank you. So, the president who turns 72 on Friday this week, and in consonance with that birthday, in consonance with the mood of the nation at the moment, he has asked that the celebrations be quiet. Now, this is quite interesting because this is the first birthday he will celebrate after he was sworn in as president of this country. Now, he's asked his friends, his well-wishers, and his family members to keep it low-key, and those who want to take out paid adverts in the newspapers should take those sums of money and donate to charities of their choice in his name. Now, there's nothing untoward with this, and this is quite commendable because at this point in time, given our collective experiences over the past 10 months, even though yes, when a human being adds a year to his or her age, it's an avenue for celebration. We should also be conscious of the time surrounding us. And it would have been out of place for him to have gone on to an elaborate celebration given the mood of the nation. So yes, he's decided to keep it low key, and yes, kudos to him. This is well placed, and I hope and trust that his associates, his allies, will accept his request and keep it low key and not carry out grand celebrations at this point in our national history.
Abby, is there something you want to look at and relating to emotional intelligence as relating to this call by the president? Hey, keep it low key.
Certainly, he has not outlawed it. He has requested it. Some people may still go ahead and do their thing. It's not illegal to do so. However, I think there is a connection, is empathy on display, considering what people are going through. The only people who are the stakeholders who are not going to be happy at all are newspaper publishers, because that normally was going to be a bonanza for them. So the fact that charitable organizations are going to get, let's say, a boost is a good thing, because all sorts of charitable organizations can do with an influx of the relatively high amounts that might have been otherwise spent for one day of celebration. So I think there's empathy on display, and kudos to the president for making that decision. It's not as if all the money would have come to him, but he's saying, look, what is there right now in the national mood that can support a celebration of me as an individual? Kudos to him for that notion. And it suggests that when things get better, then of course he should be celebrated properly.
Which leads us to the Vanguard newspaper, where the Osun state government is set to implement cyberbullying law. Is this coming a little too late, or why are we really having this issue in terms of implementation?
Well, apparently there is a Cybercrime Act of 2015 that exists already, and is supposed to prevent anybody from, promoting or otherwise propagating indecent, offensive, or other material of a menacing character to create inconvenience, annoyance, obstruction, insult. So this is a national law. And so the governor of Osun State evidently wants to domesticate or otherwise implement it in his state. And the opposition there, the APC, under whose administration the law was passed at the national level, are kicking against it. So I always find it fascinating how politicians in various parts of the country act when their party is in power at the center and another party is not in power at their state level, they fight against things that their party is responsible for. I mean, it's gone on for years now. So the opposition APC there saying, oh, the attempt to, effect these laws is to suppress opposition voice and tend the governor towards dictatorship. I wonder what their sentiment was when that law was passed, when they, when at the federal level, whether that is how they see the law as an attempt to suppress opposition voice. I'm just curious, but they are complaining against it. I don't know whether their complaint will stop the government from implementing the law. I guess this is a story that we have to come and see the part 2.
All right, let's look at some messages. Ibukun says, congratulations to the victims who were, in quote, rescued. But were there any terrorists killed or captured? On the states that say they are ready for state police, we should see the plan to train and equip the state police. Surely they cannot use the Nigerian police colleges. They need to sort out hierarchy and the interface with the federal police. Let's see. Gary Newton says, people can be heavily armed in one area and move freely, but not the same in another area. Samuel from Lekki says, it's a very shameful thing for any government or security agency to say they don't know how our armed forces are attacked. Like AB said, you can't move 1 kilometer with a laptop or a high-end phone without being questioned by a police officer on how you got it, especially when you're wearing a funky hairstyle. How come they can't find people heavily armed moving into position? Tayo says, to some Nigerians, the express mention of not taking a page in the dailies to wish the president a happy birthday is an implied invitation to do saying, let me beat them to it by wishing the president happy birthday in advance.
And
now
that,
you need to donate to a charity. Tayo.
and that comes across most times when you say, do not, with a bold sign red, do not urinate here. And that's when the host comes up and then it just probably over the time wipes up all of that red paint there. But next story.
Let's move on to the next story. And this one is coming from Premium Times. Detained Binance executive escaped from custody in Nigeria.
This is a story that is right at home with the Hollywood movie on Hollywood. Now, let's backtrack. The federal government has had its objections to Binance and its operations in Nigeria, and 2 senior Binance officials came into Nigeria to have talked to the federal government. Upon entering to Nigeria, they were detained, and then an ex parte order for their subsequent detention was obtained for an initial period of 14 days. During that period, the federal government made requests for certain information from Binance. They didn't get it, and that order was extended for an additional 14 days. We now read this morning that one of the Binance executives ostensibly went out to pray on Friday as part of the ongoing Ramadan. And in the midst of all of that, he escaped. And further reading the story, it's now suggested or clearly indicated that he not only escaped, he has left the country. He left the country on a flight outside the country. Now, this gets more interesting because the only travel document he came into the country with is still in the possession of the federal government. Now, the security agencies are unsure or uncertain as at this point in time how he escaped. However, maybe there's another perspective. Maybe people sympathetic to him within the security agencies allowed him to escape because it beats the imagination how he escaped. Not only escaped his security guards, got to the airport, got onto a plane and left the country. Now we understand that the Nigerian government is working to unravel his intended destination in a bid to get him back into custody. Now this is a bit puzzling. Are they pondering or considering using the Nnamdi Kanu method of getting him back into the country? And if that is the case, maybe they should seek the counsel of the Attorney General of the Federation on the propriety or the legality of such a move. But it's very interesting, and we want to see how the story develops, whether any heads will roll, and whether anybody will be asked to account for this dramatic and incredible escape.
All right, one final message. This is from JP. JP says, some good news on security for a change. Sustaining is key. Cheers. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your messages, and special thanks to our analysts for coming through, Mr. C and AB Bozimo. Thank you.
Thank you. Agree, disagree, hit me up at AB Bozimo on all platforms. Thank goodness for Nigerian security forces. Kudos to them. Show a security personnel love today.
All right. Thank you